There is a caller on the line, so it might be somebody about some of the issues. I'd like to get the caller's perspective. I understand we have Jason with us this morning.
Yes, how you doing, Morgan?
Hey, Jason. Welcome to the Morgan Streetman Show.
I loved it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. Tell us what's on your mind.
So, I was thinking about calling in today, and as I went through the myriad of issues facing our country, I couldn't pick a single topic, and I guess that is the topic to discuss, right? I don't remember any time in our nation's history that we have seen this much corruption and bad news come out of our governments from a state and federal level. And, tell me if I'm wrong here. Have you ever seen a point in time in this country where you have seen this many problematic scenarios facing the people of America?
I can't remember it, Jason, and that's why I think so many people, I think it's close to 75% of the population think that we're on the wrong track as a country. But you're exactly right. It's just bad news story after bad news story. We've talked here on the show wondering, could this actually be accidental, or with this many bad outcomes? I mean, think about, going back a year now to the horrible, disastrous pullout from Afghanistan. Can this be accidental to make this many policy errors? What do you think, Jason?
I don't think so at all. I think there's a much bigger plan at work here. I know there's a lot of conspiracy theories behind said plan, but, it can't be accidental, Morgan, right? There's just too many of them. It's constant. It always seems that every 2 weeks there's another major breaking event that negatively impacts the American population. So to answer your question poignantly, no, I don't think it's accidental. I think the one fallout effect, too, that we're not talking about that I think everybody needs to be concerned with is the wear and tear on the individual with all these catastrophic events, right? It's wearing us down. It's causing us to become unengaged with politics. We're backing off. Now, I know the exact opposite is also true, where more people are waking up. But I think from an overall perspective, I feel it in my personal life that there's so much stuff coming at me on a daily basis that I start not paying attention to all of it, right? And I think with where we're at in America right now, that is so dangerous because I think we need to be more engaged. And I think that is part of the design of all this, to get, just to take away our hope.
Well, and I think you're exactly right. I mean, it's kind of, if you look back at the Marxist-Leninist, the communist philosophy on how to deal with their enemies, remember the process is the punishment. So it's sort of it's a game of psychological warfare. It's the same thing that they were, we had some folks on that have talked about what it was like for their relatives to live in the prisons in Cuba and the psychological warfare games that they played with the prisoners, trying to break their will and essentially, quote unquote, re-educate them. And it's the same kind of situation. And I think a lot of folks have even gotten like a Stockholm syndrome out of it, where they're just tired of fighting it so much, so they go ahead and embrace whatever the narrative is that's being shoved into their brains by every media outlet and so many people in authority, and they just kind of buy into it. And those are the people who get on board with, hating Trump or whatever the particular issue is. I think folks just give up because nobody wants to fight all day, every day. Nobody wants to struggle all day, every day. And now the system has created that as our day in and day out situation. And I know a lot of folks are struggling with inflation, and that's something that really started taking off. And you can look at the charts as soon as Biden came into office. And a lot of these policies are designed to try to break our reliance on fossil fuels, because that's the ultimate plan of the leftists, of the green, folks, the progressives, whatever you want to call them, is they don't want us to use the internal combustion engine anymore, which is the greatest driver of our economic vitality in history. And they want to switch over to different means of essentially operating with energy, and so that we get off of fossil fuels. And, in some ways, I suppose one could say, well, that's a noble goal in some ways. I mean, we all should want to save the planet. Of course, there's some question as to whether fossil fuels are destroying it. But, this is all part of why they've created this terrible economic situation. And, they've gotten into a tax and spend mentality, and yet we don't have the economic vitality to support it. And folks are feeling it day in and day out. They're feeling it when they go to the grocery store, and they can't afford steaks anymore. They're feeling it when they can't. Go ahead. I mean, is that what you feel when you're shopping?
No, yeah, agreed. And I like your process as the punishment, because I think this folds into, the propaganda they're pushing. The one thing that we're not talking about with all this inflation is the catastrophic effect it has on small business, right? And for me, I'm a small business owner. For the first time in a decade, I've had to substantially increase the prices of my goods sold to my consumers, not by choice, not because I wanted to, not because we're big corporate greedy individuals. It was born out of necessity. Right. And so now we're feeling that because our consumer base is dipping, because we've priced a lot of them out of our market. We've also got the labor shortage.
Well, we're coming up on a hard break, Jason, but stick around. We'll let you finish your thought after the break on the Morgan Streetman Show.
We're back on the Morgan Streetman Show, and we promised to talk about a story that really illustrates the divide between parties, the ability to communicate, the desire to want to be with one another. So we're going to get to that story in a moment. But we had a great caller, and we wanted to hear more of his story. We wanted to hear the rest of his thought. We've got Jason on the line. Jason, you were telling us you're a small business owner and how you've had to increase prices, charging your customers more by a significant amount. It's just what small business folks are dealing with. It's what the end user is dealing with. So inflation is being felt in every facet.
Yeah, I encourage your listeners to go talk to small business owners and have an honest conversation. We are getting hit the hardest. We got hit first, the hardest, and the longest throughout all these unique catastrophes that we faced over the last 2 years. And they'll tell you, we are getting systematically destroyed through this process. These big corporations, they're going to be fine. They have the cash reserves to weather these storms, but small businesses do not. And, the funny part about it is if you dive into it, the majority of job creation within the United States is from small businesses.
That's exactly right.
So if you take small businesses out of the equation, the ramifications are just so severe and long-lasting, it's ridiculous. And I think, a lot of people really don't fully understand and appreciate that. Is if, say, 50% of small businesses close, that's millions and millions of people on the unemployment line, which does what to our tax base, right? It upends it. And it can upend the economy. So I really wish your listeners would go out. Everybody knows a small business owner. Have an honest conversation with them, and maybe they'll start appreciating what's truly and really happening behind the scenes with all these events, right? And then hopefully they'll wake up and they'll go to the ballot box and vote the correct way to try to stop this. Unfortunately, I think it's too far gone. I think we're going to see a crash, and a lot of people are going to suffer tremendously.
Well, you may well be right about that, Jason. First of all, thanks for the call. Great call. Really, really appreciate your perspective as a small business owner. And, folks, he's exactly right. You need to talk to small business owners. 85% of the jobs in the country used to be small business jobs, so people hiring just a few people to work in their businesses. That's what the American economy is built on. That's what the middle class is built on. And we're seeing that going away because of inflation and because of the policies of the Biden administration. So thank you, Jason. Great call. Really appreciate you being on the Morgan Streetman Show. Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.